A police officer has been shot and killed late this afternoon in Chicago's Englewood community. Good evening, everyone. The offender was also shot and wounded by other police officers.
The shooting took place near 61st and Racine. ABC 7's Ben Bradley is live there tonight. Ben, what can you tell us about what happened there?
Alan and Kathy, in the last few minutes, we just got an update from Chicago police. They tell us this officer was 43 years old. Next month, he would have marked 11 years on the force. Chopper 7 HD is over the scene right now. We'll give you a live look at where all of this unfolded this afternoon. It happened near the old 7th District Police headquarters here in the city's Englewood neighborhood. When a new station was built, this building was actually converted and is now being used by the police department's Targeted Response Unit. That's a specialized elite police squad that addresses gang and gun violence hotspots across the city. A police spokesperson, though, cannot say whether or not this particular officer was actually a member of the Targeted Response Unit or perhaps another specialized detail across the city. That police spokesperson says they're still piecing together what happened in the minutes and seconds leading up to the gunfire. There were no shortage of other officers in the area, and a person believed to be the shooter was actually shot as well. That person now in the hospital at last word in critical condition.
We was in the club, we heard shots fired, and next thing you know, when we did come out, we saw a guy, he was shot on the ground and everything, he was bleeding, and they had handcuffs on him, and he was bleeding from the mouth and in the face. Then next thing you know, they ran around the corner, it was another shooter, and we didn't hear anything, but then we saw it was red tape around, and they say a cop had got shot.
So Chicago police now saying at this point they believe there was one shooter. They can't comment on a report that there may have been a second person involved. Of course, detectives are canvassing the area right now, trying to gather all of the eyewitness accounts. We're told those accounts do include a number of police officers who were in the area. This is the third Chicago police officer on duty or off who worked in the city's Englewood neighborhood who has been killed in the last 13 months. We now understand that an assistant deputy superintendent with the police department is escorting the officer's body over to the medical examiner, and that officer, again, a 43-year-old, nearly 11-year police veteran, his family is now being notified of his death. We're live on the city's south side. Ben Bradley, ABC 7 News. Alan, Kathy, back to you.
Ben, one question. I understand the facilities used to house police special units. Do we know if this officer was in uniform at the time?
We don't know the circumstances that led up to the shooting. We don't know whether or not the officer was uniformed. I can tell you typically people who are assigned to these special units, whether it's the Targeted Response Unit or other details, do not have to wear a uniform, although they're typically recognizable by wearing their police vests. But again, we don't know whether or not this officer was beginning his shift, may have been ending his shift. Those details are still being pieced together.
All right, Ben, we understand that. Well, we'll get back to you later on with.
A Chicago police officer has been shot and killed. Authorities say that he just ended his shift on the south side when he was confronted by a man who disarmed him, then used the officer's gun to fire the fatal shot. The officer's name is not being released because all of his relatives at this point haven't been notified.
Police did say the officer was 43 years old, an 11-year veteran of the force. The shooting was in a police facility parking lot in the Englewood neighborhood near 61st and Racine. ABC 7's Stacey Baca live with more on what happened. Stacey?
Ron, yet another emotional blow for the Chicago Police Department. This is the fourth officer who has been killed during the last 13 months. And we do have an update at this hour. We have learned that the officer's name is Thor Soderberg. Now, there have been several different people talking about this officer already, several different comments. Tonight, Mayor Daley is saying that this is a sad day not only for the Chicago Police Department, he calls it a sad day for all of Chicago. Officer Soderberg's fellow officers as well, holding an impromptu processional, if you will. The ambulance that carried his body went through the streets of the south side. The officers right behind him as well, those who knew him and those who didn't. And then last, there are community members already talking about this officer and really his duty, not just on the streets, but as a volunteer, helping people like blind triathletes train for different races. That was part of him. Now, normally this officer, Officer Soderberger, was part of the police academy, but like other administrative officers, he was also assigned to work on the streets 1 week a month. It is a tribute to a fallen comrade. Police say an ambulance carries the body of the officer who was shot and killed in the parking lot of an Englewood police facility. Fellow officers take part in the procession as they leave the scene near 61st and Racine. It stretches for several blocks. There are marked and unmarked police vehicles. A tribute to an 11-year veteran who is recognized tonight for helping community members, including those who are visually impaired.
He was the kind of person who would do everything possible to make others safe.
Not only have we lost a brother in arms, but the entire population of this city has lost someone that, had you known them, you'd be very proud to have called him one of your own as well.
Chicago police say the 43-year-old officer normally worked at the police academy, but like other administrative officers, is assigned to work the streets 1 week a month. The program is called Operation Protect Youth. Police say in this case, the suspect was in his 20s. Residents nearby say they heard several shots.
We heard like 5 shots, then it had stopped, and then like 5 more shots after that, and it stopped and again. And then next thing we know, we just seen police flying back and forth.
Police say after shooting the officer, the suspect was involved in an armed robbery on a nearby street. At that point, officers inside the building heard gunfire and responded. They exchanged shots with the suspect, who was then injured.
We saw a guy, he was shot on and everything. He was bleeding.
The suspect, who is expected to be charged for the officer's death, is now at Christ Hospital and expected to survive. So once again tonight, the officer being remembered not just as a great Chicago police officer, but community members are saying that he was a role model for other officers to follow. Reporting live at police headquarters at 35th and Michigan, I'm Stacey Vaca, ABC 7 News. Kathy and Ron, back to you.
All right, Stacey, and as Stacey mentioned, 3 other Chicago police officers have been killed in the last 13 months. Officer Thomas Wortham IV was killed last May. He was off duty when police say he was confronted by robbers and shot outside his parents' Southside home. Sergeant Alan Haymaker died last February on his way to a call. He lost control of his squad car on Lakeshore Drive. Officer Alejandro Valadez was shot and killed in June of 2009 while he was responding to a call.
Let's return to our other top story this morning, the death of Officer Thor Soderberg, who was shot and killed by a suspect who had grabbed the officer's gun during an altercation. Happened yesterday as the officer was leaving work near 61st and Racine, that is in Chicago's Englewood community. ABC 7's Jason Knowles joins us live from the Police Academy with the latest. Jason?
Good morning. Officer Soderberg is being remembered here at the Chicago Police Academy. This is where he spent the last 2 years of his career training recruits. Now, I did talk to some of his colleagues and friends today. They say he was a giving man who was always willing to help the recruits.
He was a very upbeat, positive person, full of energy, full of life, and was always willing to step in, help. He could blend in with anybody, any situation.
Officers who worked with 43-year-old Thor Soderberg at the academy remember the man who they say shined and gave all of his energy to new police recruits. A class he was teaching is graduating this week.
Yesterday we interviewed recruits about the academy, about the good and bad things about the academy because they're ready to graduate. His name came up many times in interviews, and they talked about how after work, on his own time, during his lunch hour, and even before work on his own time, he came in to work with recruits.
This morning at the Chicago Police Academy, friends and colleagues hugged and raised flags to half staff to remember Soderberg. A mourning flag was also raised at police headquarters at 35th and Michigan. The 11-year veteran of the department was gunned down yesterday evening in the parking lot of the Englewood Police 7th District. The suspect shot and killed him with the officer's own gun. Soderberg was at the 7th District because 1 day a month he worked on the streets and was part of a youth program.
Not only was he an outstanding police officer, but an outstanding human being. This city has suffered a major loss. This state, this country has suffered a major loss at his death. He was a great trainer here, a great friend.
After Soderberg was killed, the suspected shooter was shot and apprehended by police at the scene of an armed robbery they say he was involved in. Sources say the 24-year-old suspect has 19 arrests on his record, along with charges that he shot his brother on the 4th of July in 2006. The suspect has not yet been charged. We are told that he is at an area hospital now recovering from non-life-threatening injuries. As for the officer, he also was a volunteer EMT, and Linda, he is survived by his wife. We're live at the Chicago Police Academy. Jason Knowles, ABC 7 News. Back to you.
Jason, we thank you for that report.
We're learning about the background of the man police say shot and killed Officer Soderberg. Charges have yet to be filed.
ABC 7's Evelyn Holmes talked with the suspect's father, and she joins us now with that part of the story. Evelyn.
Cheryl and Ron, we did learn a little bit more about this man who police say was hard to get to know. The ordeal has left the suspect's family in shock. Both relatives and neighbors describe the 24-year-old as a loner who kept himself and didn't talk much, especially to those he didn't know. His father says he was supposed to be living with his mother, who recently moved to Milwaukee, but for some reason he didn't go. Although the suspect has been identified by both relatives and police sources, we are not revealing his name because he has not been charged with a crime.
I don't believe it. In disbelief, total disbelief.
The father of the man suspected of killing Chicago police officer Thor Soderberg says his son showed no signs of having any problems in the days preceding Wednesday's attack.
If I knew that this was going to happen, it probably wouldn't have happened. But I have no idea, and everything is shocked, It's completely shocked to me.
The 67-year-old retired truck driver, who is now legally blind, says the last time he spoke with his 24-year-old son was on July 1st when he came by for a visit. He has yet to talk with him since the incident. Authorities say his son shot and killed a veteran police officer and then ran off only to attack another man.
I just thank God I'm here. That's all I can say.
Apartment janitor Richard Mintz says he found himself in the sights of the suspect just moments after he claimed his first and only victim.
He had this crazed look in his eye, but he really didn't say nothing. He just raised the gun up and started shooting.
The man was eventually shot by police trying to subdue him. Investigators say the suspect has a criminal record that includes 21 arrests, including one for the 2006 4th of July shooting of his own brother.
He had with his brother. He had an accident. He shot his brother by accident.
He was charged with aggravated battery, but the case was later dismissed. And while some who know the alleged offender describe him as having mental health issues, his father is hesitant to agree and attributes his son's strange behavior to drug abuse as he continues to support his child.
What the people come up with and what I know is two different things.
The suspect's brother says he remains under police guard and is hospitalized in critical but stable condition with a gunshot wound to the chest. Relatives of the suspect are also expressing their sorrow over the death of yet another Chicago police officer.
All right, Evelyn, thank you for that.
The void we feel right now, we probably will never recover.
Flags lowered to half-staff across our city today to remember a fallen Chicago police officer. Officer Thor Soderberg was shot and killed in the parking lot of the Englewood Police Station as he was leaving work yesterday. Good afternoon. Officer Soderberg was 43 years old, and he's being remembered not merely as a police officer, but also a man with a giving heart.
He had served as a new police recruit mentor. In fact, a class of new recruits that he had been teaching will graduate next week. ABC 7's Ben Bradley talked with some of his fellow officers from the academy. Ben?
Linda Allen, he was a husband, a son. He completed triathlons, helped the disabled, practiced martial arts, was an Army veteran who served in Desert Storm. He trained new police recruits, trained to be part of a suburban ski patrol, and the list goes on and on. This afternoon, we have a portrait of this fallen officer as painted by his friends and colleagues.
Anytime a police officer is taken from us, it's never easy. However, this one just seems to hurt a little bit more.
He's the type of person that will arrest you, and 5 minutes later buy you a sandwich, give him your phone number, and go, if you ever need anything, give me a call.
And when it comes to being a police, probably one of the best police officers that you would meet. So we have lost not only a good officer, but a true friend.
On the job and off, Walter Metcalf and Officer Thor Soderberg were close. Metcalf admired him as a police officer and a person.
My wife is due to have a baby this month. She informed me that she had thought about him being the godfather. And the reason she did that is because how he is inside.
The 43-year-old officer trained new recruits at the police academy. His most recent class is set to graduate next week. Today, they pay tribute.
He has prepared all of us for this job.
I am very confident in every single one of us in our class. We will make him proud.
Investigators continue to build their case against the Southside man who is said to have confronted Officer Soderberg yesterday, grabbed his gun, and shot him as he left a police facility in the Englewood neighborhood. The man, who sources say has 19 previous arrests, including charges he shot his own brother, remains hospitalized. Relatives say the man suffers from mental illness. Those who knew Officer Soderberg from his years volunteering with athletes with disabilities, well, they say a kinder man you could not meet.
He was ready to protect and serve the community, but you couldn't meet a more lovely lamb.
Well, today there were a lot of parallels drawn between Officer Soderberg and Tom Wortham, another police officer shot and killed in the Englewood neighborhood in May. Both men served their country in the military and served their city with pride. Now, Linda, no word yet on funeral arrangements, though, for Officer Soderberg.
Thank you. It's so nice to know more about him, too.
As difficult it was for those officers to talk about him, it really painted a much broader picture of the man.
Yeah, it's not just a man in a blue police uniform that we don't get to know. To hear from his friends and colleagues really helps you understand that this was a guy with so many different dimensions.
Right.
Okay, thanks very much. And as you know, we'll have more about the suspect in that shooting, and then ahead on our news at 5 o'clock, we will hear from the suspect's father.
Chicago police officer Thor Soderberg is being remembered tonight as a husband, a teacher, and a friend. And his fellow officers and friends are saying that his death is a huge loss for the department and for our city, and for anyone who ever met that officer. Good evening. Officer Soderberg was 43 years old. He was shot and killed in the parking lot of an Englewood police facility as he was leaving work yesterday.
ABC 7's Ben Bradley joining us tonight with more on how the officer is being remembered tonight. Ben?
Kathy, Allen, sources tell us the suspect in this case has 19 previous arrests, including a charge that he once shot his own brother. Relatives say the 24-year-old man suffers from mental illness, but they can't explain why he may have shot a police officer. All that as the department honors a man who, by all accounts, lived a remarkable life, helping others.
Students pay tribute to their teacher. Police recruits trained by Officer Thor Soderberg and set to graduate next week vow his legacy will live on through their work.
He has prepared all of us for this job. I am very confident in every single one of us in our class. We will make him proud.
Soderberg took pride in training new generations of Chicago police officers. Yesterday, though, he had just finished working a special assignment to combat summer youth violence. As he left a police facility and walked through a parking lot saturated with squad cars, a man grabbed the officer's gun and opened fire, first shooting Soderberg and then shooting at and missing another man down the block.
He had this crazed look in his eye, but he really didn't say nothing. He just raised the gun up and started shooting.
If I knew that this was going to happen, it probably wouldn't have happened. But I have no idea, and everything is shocked, it's completely shocked to me.
Today, investigators continue to build their case against the 24-year-old suspect, who remains hospitalized under police guard. Soderberg's colleagues, though, prefer to focus on the friend and mentor they lost.
He's the type of person that will arrest you, and 5 minutes later buy you a sandwich, give me your phone number, and go, if you ever need anything, give me a call.
Anytime a police officer is taken from us, it's never easy. However, this one just seems to hurt a little bit more.
Officer Soderberg is survived by his wife, mother, and father, as well as countless others whose lives he impacted. Soderberg completed triathlons, helped the disabled, and served as a combat engineer in Operation Desert Storm.
He was just that kind of person. He was always looking out for everyone else.
A further sign of this officer's commitment to helping others, the day before he died, he was at the police union lodge to donate blood. As for charges against the suspect, none filed yet. He, of course, is under police guard. He's not going anywhere, so they want to make sure they've got a good case before they file it.
Okay. Ben,
All right,
thank you. The Chicago police officer who was killed yesterday is remembered tonight as a man whose life was dedicated to serving others. Thor Soderberg was shot while leaving work in the Englewood neighborhood.
ABC 7's Stacey Baca here with more on today's tributes to Officer Soderberg. Stacey?
Well, Ron and Kathy, tonight the widow of Officer Soderberg said in a written statement that she's devastated. And if people want to help, they should start by supporting and helping children. She says her husband did just that. He was also a son, a community volunteer, Army veteran, and most recently a police academy instructor. And his students graduate next week. Today, They vowed that his legacy will live on through their work. Their eyes well with tears. Tomorrow's police officers remember their instructor at the police academy, Officer Thor Soderberg.
He has prepared all of us for this job. I am very confident in every single one of us and in our class. We will make him proud.
They stand in rank and file today, paying tribute. Outside the academy, a bunting is draped to remember the 11-year veteran. His loss is palpable here. His students support each other arm in arm. His colleagues equally devastated.
He would give you the shirt off his back. He is probably one of the nicest human beings I ever met in my life, and on my 16 years in the police department.
Looking at his co-workers, the grief, the loss cuts deep, a stark contrast to Soderberg's sunny disposition.
You walk away from him with an impression of just a loving soul, a loving spirit.
He was also a veteran, a community member who helped blind athletes compete in triathlons, and most importantly, a friend so close that one fellow officer's pregnant wife thought of him like family.
She informed me that she had thought about him being the godfather. And the reason she did that is because how he is inside.
As police mourn, they also move forward with the case. Police say a 24-year-old suspect confronted Soderberg outside an Englewood police facility, grabbed the officer's gun, and shot him several times. That suspect was shot by other officers and is still in the hospital. The suspect's father says his son did not seem to have any problems recently.
I don't believe it. You know, in disbelief, total disbelief.
Well, that statement released by Soderberg's widow, Jennifer, said in part, and I am quoting here, if you have the opportunity to do something and change someone's life for the better, do it. It goes on to say, start by taking care of every child. Thor and I knew that each young person needs 5 important adults, 1 strong adult to provide a positive influence in their lives. And Ron and Kathy, she also goes on to say in that statement that you could help children even if they're not your own, because they didn't have any children, and that's exactly what they did, even with children in the Englewood community.
All right. Thanks very much, Stacy.
Good evening. I'm James B. Jackson, Assistant Superintendent, Law Enforcement Operations. It is with great sadness that I report a tragic loss to the entire city of Chicago. At approximately 3:45 this afternoon, a Chicago police officer who was working Operation Protect Youth returned to his vehicle at the end of his tour of duty. His vehicle was parked in the parking lot of the police facility at 61st and Racine. While in the parking lot, the uniformed officer became involved in a struggle with a 24-year-old male individual. During this struggle, the offender disarmed the officer. The offender then shot the officer, fatally wounding him. The offender then fled and is believed to have committed an armed robbery a short distance away. He fired additional shots which were heard by officers inside the police facility. Several officers quickly responded, and there was an exchange of gunfire with the offender. The offender was struck. His injuries is considered non-life threatening. He was transported to a local hospital for treatment. The officer was a 43-year-old, 11-year veteran of the department. He was most recently assigned to the Education and Training Division. We are not releasing the identity of the officer at this time, pending notifications to additional family members. The media is being asked to honor this request. The entire Chicago Police Department would like to extend our deepest condolences to the officer's family. We ask that you keep them in your prayers.
This is an extremely unfortunate situation that we find ourselves in once again so soon. Talking to the friends, colleagues, partners of this officer, it's quite apparent that not only have we lost a brother in arms, but the entire population of this city has lost someone that, had you known them, you'd be very proud to have called him one of your own as well.
Thank you.
Other news now today. An Evanston police officer is recovering this afternoon after being shot. That officer was struck in the arm while responding to a domestic dispute this morning. Happened in the 1500 block of Pittner. ABC 7's Ravi Bechwal joins us live from Evanston with more details. Ravi?
Well, Linda, the Evanston police have just updated the situation right here. Now, their officer suffered what they're calling a minor bullet wound to the arm. The condition of the offender in this case has improved. He's just gotten out of surgery at St. Francis Hospital. He's gone from critical to serious condition. But it all comes from an event that really came to a head this morning. Evanston police were called to the 1500 block of Pinter in South Evanston and told to be careful because they were likely to encounter a man with a gun. According to police, officers were involved in gunplay at that apartment with 30-year-old Reggie Henley, an unnamed Evanston police officer only on his third day on the job, was shot through the arm.
He was a new recruit, matter of fact, so he kind of got baptized by a very unfortunate circumstance. He's only been on the street 3 days.
Family members kept vigil for Henley, also known as Capone, at St. Francis Hospital. Medical officials there confirmed that he is in critical condition with bullet wounds in the neck, chest, and abdomen.
There was a domestic, you come to check it out, but why would you need your guns out? Why would something so simple early in the morning lead to somebody getting shot 3 times?
Family members say Henley was at the apartment with the mother of 3 of his children, preparing to move out. The police say the alleged abuse happened overnight, and the alleged victim was not home when police arrived at 8:56 this morning. Henley's current girlfriend, who has a 4-month-old baby by him, says that her man did not lead a complicated life.
I mean, he's a normal person like everybody else. We all go through things and, deal with different issues. But no, I would not say his life was complicated.
So Evanston police are saying that their officers fired in self-defense after encountering a very volatile situation this morning just before 9 o'clock. And what we can tell you about that is that the whole situation is being investigated, but of course not by the Evanston police. It will be investigated by the Illinois State Police and their Public Integrity Task Force, as is the case whenever there is a police shooting. Reporting live from Evanston, Ravi Bechwal, ABC 7 News. Alan, back to you.
All right, Ravi, thanks.
We're learning more tonight about a Chicago police officer who was shot and killed while off duty on the city's south side last night. Thomas Wortham IV is being remembered not only for his service as a police officer and a soldier, but also for his work as a leader in his community. ABC 7's Evelyn Holmes is live at the 7th Police District where Wortham worked. Evelyn?
Ron, the black and purple bunting here is an indication of the grief felt by Thomas Wortham's fellow officers today. Today he is being remembered not only for his bright spirit, but also for his commitment of giving to others. Officer Thomas Wortham IV was the Chatham community's native son.
He's been committed, his family has been committed to community work and betterment of the neighborhood.
The off-duty Chicago police officer survived 2 tours of duty in a war-torn Iraq and the mean streets of the city's Englewood neighborhood, only to be gunned down in the driveway of his parents' Southside home last night by a group of men allegedly trying to steal his motorcycle. 6th Ward Alderman Fredrina Lyle has known Wortham and his family both professionally and personally for years, and was hard hit by word of his death.
We talk about rebuilding families, so we can't afford to lose any, and I think that's the biggest travesty. We lost one.
Wortham was active in the Southside community where 3 generations of his family had lived, in the house his grandfather had built. Friends say the 30-year-old became president of the Cole Park Advisory Council after recent shootings there made it unsafe for neighborhood kids.
To talk the talk and walk the walk. He was a genuine individual. He meant what he said. And he said, I'm going to try and do what I can do to make this park a better place for everybody.
There's also grief at Brother Rice High School, where the flag flies at half-staff for the latest alumni lost. The death of Thomas Wortham, who graduated in 1998 and ran track and played soccer and football, comes almost a year after fellow graduate and Chicago cop Officer Alejandro Valadez, a 2000 graduate, was killed in the line of duty last June.
Tom is the perfect example. He served his community, he served his country, he served his family.
He lived life the right way, and to see him go so young is just an absolute shame.
Wortham was single and had been with the Chicago Police Department for 3 years. He'd been on furlough since returning from his latest military service. Those who worked with him at the Englewood District say he was proud to be a cop and proud to serve his community.
Neighborhood residents plan a prayer vigil for the slain officer in that Chatham neighborhood. In the meantime, some members of the motorcycle community plan to do a ride-by to honor him. Reporting live from the Chicago Police Department's 7th District here in the Englewood neighborhood, Evelyn Holmes, ABC 7 News. Cheryl, back to you.
All right, Evelyn, thank you for that report.
A crowd gathers tonight in memory of an off-duty Chicago police officer who was killed in an attempted robbery. Thomas Wortham recently returned from his second tour in Iraq, only to be gunned down outside his parents' Southside home. Wortham served 3 years on the Chicago Police Department.
He was shot last night near 85th and King Drive as 4 people tried to steal his motorcycle. ABC 7's Ben Bradley live tonight with breaking developments. Ben.
Kathy, sources now say the 4th and final suspect is now in police custody. We're told he was arrested just a short time ago by officers who had been scouring this city looking for that final fugitive that was involved, that believed to have been involved in a robbery that ended with a police officer's murder.
This is a wake-up call for all of us.
They gather in a park he helped protect, across from the home where he was raised, steps from the driveway where he was killed.
You couldn't have asked for a more caring or better person. And just please everyone continue to pray for their family. Because this is just such a huge tragedy.
Chicago police officer Thomas Wortham IV had shown his parents a motorcycle he bought, a gift for himself after safely returning home from his second tour of duty in Iraq. Police say 4 armed men pulled up in a car and tried to steal that bike. Wortham's father, a retired Chicago cop himself, grabbed his gun. In the exchange of fire, Officer Wortham was hit, so were 2 of the suspects. Neighbor Al Stewart rushed to the elder Wortham's aid.
He just said he needed help, that he shot the 2 guys that tried to rob his son. Just a senseless criminal act that robbed the city and the community of a very positive individual.
Chicago Police Sergeant Edward Adams served on Mayor Harold Washington's bodyguard detail with Wortham's father.
Worked on 4 other police murders in my career, and none of them has hit home like this. Is just, because I knew him, knew the family.
20-year-old suspect Brian Floyd died at the scene. Another suspect is being treated for injuries. 2 others fled in this Nissan. One of them has since turned himself in. Chatham residents say there have been 3 shootings near this park in recent months. Mayor Daley blames youngsters with easy access to killing machines.
If the person didn't have this, it never happened.
So to recap the latest developments now, 1 suspect dead, a 2nd hospitalized, the 3rd turned himself in early this afternoon, the 4th person arrested by Chicago police officers just a short time ago. Those 3 who survived this altercation will no doubt be interviewed by police. No charges yet. That could come as early as tomorrow. We're live in the city's Chatham neighborhood on the south side. Ben Bradley, ABC 7 News. Kathy?
Okay, Ben. Thank you.
Well, this morning's top story, police are questioning the suspects in the shooting death of one of Chicago's police officers, Officer Thomas Wortham.
And ABC 7's Jason Owens joins us now live from the police department's 7th District, where that young officer worked. Jason?
Well, this next bit of information is somewhat unusual. According to the Tribune, a relative of one of the suspects says that this was all part of some strange, elaborate drinking game of dare, where they were daring someone to see who could rob somebody else first. Now, this will probably be something that investigators and detectives question these 3 suspects about, these 3 suspects who are in custody, but so far, none of them have been charged yet.
At Cole Park, a crowd gathered last night to remember Officer Thomas Wortham IV. He was shot and killed not far from there on Wednesday night. Wortham was showing his parents the new motorcycle he bought after safely returning from a second tour of duty in Iraq. Police say 4 armed men pulled up in a car and tried to steal the bike. Shots were fired, and then Wortham was hit and killed. His father, a retired Chicago police officer, grabbed his own gun and returned fire.
He just said he needed help, that he shot the 2 guys that tried to rob his son.
20-year-old suspect Brian Floyd died at the scene. Another suspect is being treated for his injuries. 2 others fled in this car. They are both in police custody this morning and being questioned.
Worked on 4 other police murders in my career, and none of them has hit home like this. Is just, because I knew him, knew the family.
You couldn't have asked for a more caring or better person. And just please everyone continue to pray for their family, because this is just such a huge tragedy.
The very last suspect to be caught was apprehended at a traffic stop last night, and police say that this suspect was actually ducking and hiding in his car. Back here at District 7, where the officer worked, you can see that there is a purple and black bunting up here behind me. It is hanging up here behind me, and Stacy and Jose, some of his fellow officers, are expected to talk today. We're live in Inglewood. Jason Knowles, ABC 7 News. Back to both of you.
Jason, thank you very much.
Mark. We do have some breaking news this morning. Chicago police are once again mourning the loss of one of their own. An off-duty Chicago police officer has been killed in the city's South Shore neighborhood. ABC 7's Michelle Gallardo joins us live from the scene. That scene's located at 74th Street and South Evans Avenue. Michelle?
Stacy, good morning. Well, the shooting happened just after 6 o'clock this morning. Like you mentioned, he was off duty, apparently arriving home from work at that hour. Now, police have not confirmed his identity as of yet, but an ABC 7 News sources tells us that the officer was 62 years old and, in fact, due to retire next March. It appears he may have been part of Mayor Daley's security detail. Now, the shooting does appear to have been the result of an attempted robbery. We were able to speak to some residents that were nearby just before the shooting happened.
I came out on the front porch, and me and my friend, we sat down, and like 2 minutes afterwards, we heard somebody shoot. And it was someone that walked past, but we don't know if that was the person that was shooting.
Now, there are no suspects under arrest as of yet. Right after the shooting happened, the officer was rushed to Northwestern Memorial Hospital in critical condition, but as we've already mentioned, he unfortunately did not survive. We do expect to get an official statement from police from Northwestern Memorial. That is due to happen at about 9:30 this morning, so we'll certainly have a lot more information for you on this during our afternoon and evening newscasts. Live at 74th and South Evans, I'm Michelle Gallardo, ABC 7 News. Stacy, back to you.
All right, yet another emotional blow for the Chicago Police Department. They just laid to rest Officer Soderberg last week, so certainly a difficult time right now. Thank you for that report, Michelle.
A Chicago police officer is shot and killed outside of his home on Chicago's South Side. Officer Michael Bailey was 62 years old and set to retire in just a few weeks. Bailey was off duty. He had just arrived home after guarding Mayor Daley's house overnight. Good evening, everyone. Ravi is off today. Officer Bailey is now the 3rd Chicago police officer killed in the last 2 months. The shooting happened about 6 this morning in the 7400 block of South Evans in the Park Manor neighborhood. We have 2 live reports for you this evening. ABC 7's Sarah Schulte has reaction to this 3rd officer murdered since May. But let's begin with ABC 7's Evelyn Holmes with more on what happened and the search for suspects. She is live in the South Loop at the 1st Police District. Evelyn.
Karen, colleagues of Officer Michael Bailey, who worked here out of 1st District, have been left shaken by his slaying. So far at this hour, there's no one in custody and no arrests have been made as Area 2 police detectives continue to canvass the neighborhood where he was attacked. Investigators do say that they have at least a description of sorts of one suspect, but they're actually looking for 3. That description of that one suspect, very vague. Investigators also say that it appears as such that the motive was robbery and that these robbers tried to rob or steal the officer's new Buick Regal that he had just purchased for himself as an early retirement gift. A motorcade escorts the body of Chicago police officer Michael Bailey to the medical examiner's office just hours after he's shot and killed during an attempted robbery.
Words cannot express the shock, sorrow, and outrage we feel at the loss of a Chicago police officer.
While shocked officers gather outside Northwestern Memorial Hospital, where the injured Bailey was brought after the attack, relatives and friends rushed to the officer's home.
Everyone's sad about this.
and it's happening too frequently. And the sadness is the fact that we got laws on the book that will stop a lot of this, but people have no fear of consequences for what they do.
Neighborhood residents tell investigators the 62-year-old police officer who was still in uniform was murdered as he returned to his Park Manor home on the south side after working an overnight shift. That's when they say several men tried to rob him and steal his car. Bailey's son attempted to go after his father's attackers with one of his dad's guns.
I was laying in my bed and I heard the shots. I heard about approximately 6 shots.
Okay. And then what did you do next?
I laid there for a few minutes and just start praying.
Formerly with the fire department, the 20-year police veteran was set to retire in just a few weeks and worked out of the 1st District, where flags now fly at half-staff.
I worked with him on the midnight shift. He seemed like a very nice, pleasant police officer. He was an older police officer, and it was just very nice working with him for the short time I did work with him.
Officer Bailey was often assigned to guard Mayor Daley's home. The mayor issued a statement that reads in part, "It's absolutely outrageous. Our prayers go out to the family of Officer Bailey. I knew him. He was a good man. He did not deserve this." Today's attack marked the 3rd shooting death of an off-duty Chicago police officer in the last 2 months.
Times have come where we've got to readjust with how we police to bring situations like this to an end.
Because of police department rules, Officer Bailey was facing mandatory retirement at the age of 63. He's currently, at the time of his death, 62. Investigators say they did recover 3 weapons at the scene of the crime, one of those belonging to Officer Bailey. Neighbors say Bailey, who they called affectionately Big Mike, was the vice president of the block club and went out of his way not only keep everyone on the block safe, but especially kids. He said he was working with the neighborhood residents as well as the police department to have a neighborhood camera established simply to keep everyone out of harm's way. Reporting live from Chicago Police Department's District 1, Evelyn Holmes, ABC 7 News. Karen, back to you.
All right, Evelyn, thank you. A decorated Chicago police officer is shot and killed outside of his home after finishing his shift. Michael Bailey was 62 years old and getting ready to retire in just a few weeks. Good evening, everyone. I'm Karen Jordan. Ravi is off tonight. Officer Bailey was off duty after guarding Mayor Daley's home overnight. He is the 3rd Chicago police officer killed in the last 2 months. The shooting happened about 6 this morning in the 7400 block of South Evans. Officer Bailey worked out of the 1st Police District in the South Loop, and that's where we begin our coverage with ABC 7's Sarah Schulte. Sarah.
Well, Karen, August 14th would have been Officer Michael Bailey's 63rd birthday. Because of he was forced to retire because of the mandatory retirement age at 63 at the Chicago Police Department. As an early retirement gift for himself, Officer Bailey bought himself a brand new Buick Regal. Investigators take pictures of Officer Michael Bailey's car, a brand new Buick. The 62-year-old uniformed Chicago police officer was cleaning when he was shot to death early this morning.
I was laying in my bed and I heard the shots. I heard about approximately 6 shots.
Okay. And then what did you do next?
I laid there for a few minutes and just start praying, as I usually do, because it's not unusual to hear shots in this neighborhood.
Lillian Nix had no idea the shots involved her friend and neighbor. Officer Bailey had just returned to his Southside home after working an overnight shift guarding Mayor Daley's home. Police say Bailey was shot to death in an apparent robbery attempt. Bailey's son heard the shots from inside. He ran outside and tried to go after his father's attackers with one of his dad's guns.
Everyone's sad about this, and it's happening too frequently, and the sadness is the fact that we got laws on the book that will stop a lot of this, but people have no fear of consequences for what they do.
As distraught relatives and friends gathered at Bailey's home, the traditional motorcade of Chicago police officers escorted the body of Michael Bailey from Northwestern Memorial Hospital to the medical examiner's office.
Words cannot express the shock, sorrow, and outrage we feel at the loss of a Chicago police officer.
Bailey was 1 month away from retirement. The 20-year veteran worked out of the 1st District with Sergeant Dennis Hinkson.
I have 33 years in the police force, so I'm sort of used to it. I've seen a lot of police officers get killed in the line of duty, unfortunately. It's always more tragic when it's someone you know.
For 6th Ward Alderman Fredrina Lyle, Bailey is the second officer killed in her ward in the past 2 months. Lyle knew Bailey and his family well. She says they were involved in the CAPS programs and block clubs.
They were doing those things that we ask people to do. Stay in the community and work to make the community better and not just flee. And that's what they were doing.
And in a statement released today, Mayor Daley says in part, quote, "It's absolutely outrageous. Our prayers go out to the family of Officer Bailey. I knew him. He was a good man. He did not deserve this," end quote. Now, Officer Bailey was not a regular on Mayor Daley's detail, though. He was assigned to his home once in a while. Now, the outrage from the mayor to aldermen throughout the department is only heightened by the fact, as we mentioned, that Bailey is the third officer killed by gun violence in the last 2 months. Now, Superintendent Jody Weiss did not comment today. That is because he is out of town because a relative in his family has died. Live at the 1st District, Sarah Schulte, ABC 7 News. Karen, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. For the third time in 2 months, the Chicago Police Department mourns the loss of one of their own. An officer is gunned down by thieves apparently trying to steal his car. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Officers and city officials are shocked and outraged at this latest shooting.
And Mayor Daley calls this a tragic, stunning reminder of the senseless violence in too many communities. Colleagues describe Bailey as a shining example for others. ABC 7's Evelyn Holmes joins us live from the South Loop with more. Evelyn?
Officers here at the 1st District Police Station, where Officer Michael Bailey was assigned, are certainly devastated by his murder. Bailey is being remembered today as a dedicated police officer who spent about 10 years as a suburban firefighter prior to becoming a Chicago police officer. This morning, his colleagues honored him through their memories. Stunned officers stand in the shadow of flags that now fly at half-staff as cops here at the 1st District mourn the loss of Chicago police officer Michael Bailey.
Mike was a funny guy. I'm going to miss his infectious smile. Great guy. My heart is heavy.
Inside the station house is where fellow officers who work side by side with the 20-year department veteran gathered to share their thoughts of the man they call a gentle giant, who always had the time to share his knowledge with younger officers.
Officer Bailey was a kind, compassionate person, hardworking, caring, intelligent.
The married father of 3 was preparing to leave the job everyone says he loved. Bailey's goodbye party was planned for the first week in August. He was roughly a month away from turning 63, the mandatory retirement age for Chicago police officers. After finishing his overnight tour of duty guarding Mayor Daley's home, he was gunned down Sunday morning in front of his own South Side house by attackers who tried to steal the new black Buick Regal the officer had recently bought as a retirement gift for himself.
In his last month, about a week and a half ago, he came to me and applied for 3 different overtime initiatives. And I mentioned to him, I kind of laughed. I go, "Mike, you're going to retire in a month. You know, why are you doing this?" And we kind of both laughed, and he gave me that wry smile that he has. And he's, "Well, I'm just dedicated, boss. What can I say?"
A former fire department employee, friends say Officer Bailey was a dedicated family man who was not only active in CAPS programs, but also vice president of his neighborhood block club.
You know, he gave us a lot of insight how to survive on this job, how to work this job, how to serve the citizens of the community. You know, I'm just devastated and shook up about it because a gentleman like that gentleman cannot be replaced.
Bailey was also a Tai Chi master and very dedicated and involved in his church. At this hour, police say they're still looking for 3 suspects in his slaying. No one is in custody and no arrests have been made. Reporting live from the Chicago Police Department's 1st District Police Station, Evelyn Holmes, ABC 7 News. Back to you in the studio.
Okay, thank you, Evelyn.
Chicago police officers gathered to remember their friend and colleague, Officer Michael Bailey. The 20-year veteran of the force was shot to death outside of his home yesterday morning. Today, the search continues for suspects in his murder. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Linda Yu.
And I'm Sylvia Perez. Alan Kraszewski has the day off. Mayor Daley is also making his first public comments on the death of another police officer.
ABC 7's Sarah Schulte joins us live from the South Loop at the slain officer's police district with the latest. Sarah?
Well, Linda, Mayor Daley knew Officer Bailey well. That's because prior to Bailey's murder, Bailey had been assigned to guard Mayor Daley's home overnight. Meantime, here at the 1st District, Bailey's colleagues gathered to talk about him this morning. They said they were in the process of planning a retirement pizza party for him in a few weeks, and they were also looking forward to sending some of those old man retirement jokes his way. The purple bunting goes up on yet another police district. Those who worked with Officer Michael Bailey at the 1st District remember the 62-year-old as a gentle giant.
He gave us a lot of insight how to survive on his job, how to work his job, how to serve the citizens of the community.
1 month away from mandatory retirement, the slain officer's watch commander said there were no signs of Bailey wanting to slow down.
About a week and a half ago, he came to me and applied for 3 different overtime initiatives. And I mentioned to him, I kind of laughed. I go, Mike, you're going to retire in a month. You know, why are you doing this? And we kind of both laughed, and he gave me that wry smile that he has, and he's, well, I'm just dedicated, boss. What can I say?
As an early retirement gift to himself, Bailey bought a brand new Buick Regal. He was shining that car early yesterday morning when he was killed in an apparent robbery attempt. Bailey was in uniform. He had just returned from working an overnight shift guarding Mayor Daley's home.
He was a very, very kind and considerate man who wore the uniform with pride. And we are very saddened for his family.
A day after Bailey's murder, Mayor Daley stood with Governor Quinn and dozens of other elected officials to announce a new law that makes aggravated unlawful use of a weapon a non-probational offense. The event took place at Cole Park, where Officer Thomas Wortham was killed in May. 2 weeks ago, Officer Thor Soderberg was also killed by gun violence. Today, his widow looked on, while Officer Wortham's father emotionally said it will take more than gun laws to keep kids from turning into thugs.
We cannot continue to raise a generation of kids who grow up and think that they can kill people at will.
Thomas Wortham went on to say what is needed are more resources, more money in communities to make sure the next generation of kids do not go on, certainly to kill other people and to kill each other. We asked Mayor Daley about that, about more funds and resources. The mayor did answer saying that the problem is that the city and the state, certainly, and the federal government, everybody is out of money. Meantime, the police are still looking for the suspects, certainly in this case. Live at the 1st District at 17th and South State, Sarah Schulte, ABC 7 News. Sylvia, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. For the 3rd time in 2 months, Chicago police officers tonight are mourning the loss of a fellow officer. Flags flying at half-staff at the 1st District headquarters today after the death of Officer Michael Bailey. Good evening, everyone. Alan is off tonight. Officer Bailey had just returned home following his shift when he was shot and killed.
That 62-year-old officer was just a few weeks away from retirement. Tonight, the search for suspects is intensified. ABC 7's Sarah Schulte live from the 1st District Police Headquarters. Sarah?
Well, Ron, at the request of the Chicago Police Department, the FBI joins the search for Michael Bailey's killers. This includes a $20,000 reward from the FBI. Add that to 2 more rewards that have been offered. The total now is $55,000. Bailey worked out of the 1st District here this morning. His colleagues remembered him, and they called him a gentle giant.
My heart is heavy. That's it.
It's too much for some of Officer Michael Bailey's 1st District colleagues to take. The 62-year-old may have been weeks away from retirement, but his watch commander says Bailey gave no signs of slowing down.
About a week and a half ago, he came to me and applied for 3 different overtime initiatives. And I mentioned to him, I kind of laughed. I go, Mike, you're going to retire in a month. You know, why are you doing this? And we kind of both laughed, and he gave me that wry smile that he has, and he's, well, I'm just dedicated, boss. What can I say?
Despite his reluctance to leave a job he loved, Bailey bought himself a brand new Buick Regal as an early retirement gift. He was cleaning that car early yesterday morning in front of his Southside home when he was shot to death in an apparent robbery attempt. Bailey was still in his uniform. He had just returned from an overnight shift guarding Mayor Daley's Southside home.
He was a very, very kind and considerate man who wore the uniform with pride. And we are very saddened for his family.
And there are two families who know the Bailey family's pain. Officer Thor Soderberg's widow and Officer Thomas Wortham's parents and sister joined Mayor Daley, Governor Quinn, and several other politicians to announce a new law that strengthens penalties for the illegal use of a weapon. But Wortham's father said it will take more than gun laws to save the next generation from turning into thugs.
We cannot continue to raise a generation of kids who grow up and think that they can kill people at will.
Wortham went on to say that more funds are needed in the neighborhood, and while Mayor Daley didn't talk about any additional resources, the Chicago Sun-Times is reporting that in response to all this violence that the mayor plans on hiring 100 more police officers. But the mayor did say today that really the bottom line is it's up to people. The mayor says, quote, people have to take control over their own families. Live at the 1st District at 17th and South State, Sarah Schulte, ABC 7 News. Ron, Kathy, back to you.
All right, thank you, Sarah.
Rewards worth a total of $55,000 are now being offered for information leading to an arrest and conviction in the shooting death of a Chicago police officer. And the FBI is now involved in the search for the killer or killers of Officer Michael Bailey. ABC 7's John Garcia tonight following the story live from 1st District Police Headquarters. John.
Kathy, in addition to offering resources, the FBI is contributing $20,000 to a reward to help find the killer. The rest of that money coming from the Fraternal Order of Police and the Chicago Police Memorial Fund. All are hoping that the money will help prompt witnesses to come forward to help investigators find the killer. Thomas Wortham III, a retired officer with more than 3 decades on the force, says he's never seen anything like the current level of disrespect and violence against police officers. Michael Bailey was in uniform when he was gunned down early Sunday. Wortham's son, Thomas IV, announced he was an officer before a gunman shot him 2 months ago.
It's almost like it's just, this is a movie. This is not real. This doesn't happen in real life. You don't have this number of policemen killed in such a short span of time.
Officer Bailey is the 3rd Chicago officer killed in the last 2 months. Chicago police, moving quickly to try to solve his murder, have asked for help from the FBI in the investigation.
We have electronic resources, other resources in terms of expertise. So whatever they need that we can provide, we'll do that to help solve this case.
Officer Bailey, less than a month from mandatory retirement at age 63, had just finished his shift guarding Mayor Daley's residence and was washing his new car at home. The mayor knew Officer Bailey and says he wants the killers caught.
He was a very, very kind and considerate man who wore the uniform with pride, and we are very saddened for his family.
The mayor spoke at Cole Park, across the street from where Officer Wortham was killed, to praise a new law that makes prison time mandatory for unlawful use of a gun. Wortham's father also supports the law, but says the answer also lies with citizens getting involved. Investigators reportedly have few leads at this point in Officer Bailey's murder.
I think this is a wake-up call, because if these individuals would shoot policemen, what do they think about you?
A spokesperson for Mayor Daley confirms that the city plans to hire 100 additional officers as soon as possible to put more cops on the streets to try to fight this increasing violence. The mayor also agrees, however, that more cops is not the only answer. He says citizens need to get involved. Live at 1st District Headquarters at 18th and State, John Garcia, ABC 7 News. Ron, back to you.
And our top story this morning, police from all over the area gathered today to honor a fallen officer.
Chicago police officer and war veteran Tom Wortham was murdered last week. His funeral is this morning. ABC 7's Jason Knowles live at the Southside Church where it's going to be held. Jason?
Good morning. Officer Thomas Wortham was trying to stop the violence in his neighborhood. It was one of his main goals. Instead, he ended up being the victim of a heartless crime. He was gunned down by 4 suspects. His visitation was yesterday, and today is his funeral. He'll be laid to rest. Hundreds turned out yesterday, though, to say their goodbyes last night at the visitation. The 30-year-old Chicago police officer with 3 years on the job had just gotten back from a second tour of duty in Iraq. The off-duty officer was at his parents' home in the Chatham neighborhood when police say he was gunned down by thieves who wanted his motorcycle. Police say 4 men are to blame. Wortham's father, a retired officer, shot one dead, injured another. 2 are being held without bond. Wortham was highly involved in preserving his neighborhood park and keeping it safe for kids. Judy and Ben services will begin here later this morning. Hundreds of fellow officers, family, and friends are also expected to be here to say their final goodbyes, and a lot of them have said that Wortham was someone who just did everything right in his life. We're live on the city south side. Jason Knowles, ABC 7 News. Back to both of you.
All right, Jason, coming up in the 11 o'clock hour this morning, we will be streaming Officer Wortham's funeral live on our website, abc7chicago.com.
Other than my father, I don't know if God ever created a better man.
Hundreds pack a Southside church to celebrate the life of a fallen Chicago police officer, Thomas Wortham IV. An officer who is being remembered as a son, a brother, and a friend with a giving and humble heart. A fallen hero and a warrior, those are just two of the words being used to describe Officer Wortham. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ravi Bajwal in for Alan Krzyzewski.
And I'm Linda Yu. Thomas Wortham is being remembered not just as a Chicago police officer, but also an Iraqi veteran. At today's funeral, his parents were praised for raising such a great young man who wanted to make a difference in people's lives. ABC 7's Leah Hope was at the funeral and joins us with today's moving tribute. Leah?
Linda, indeed it was. A funeral service is for the living, and there was praise and support for Wortham's family and girlfriend. In return, those closest to Wortham made today a call to action.
The tribute to a fallen officer drew hundreds of fellow officers. This was a sign of deep respect for a man who walked the walk.
He stood up. He was working to improve his community, not just as a soldier, not just as a police officer, but as a resident, to protecting his neighborhood for the children of Chatham.
Officer Tom Wortham IV was killed when suspects attempted to steal his motorcycle. He was a Chicago police patrolman who had served 2 tours of duty in Iraq with the Wisconsin Army National Guard. But the strongest memories shared about Wortham today were about the dignity with which he carried himself and his service to his community outside of work.
The people of Chicago have lost a compassionate man, a community leader who touched many lives, worked tirelessly to make his neighborhood and his beat a better place to live.
God did not give Tom a long chronological life. His 3 decades on this earth, he had a servant's heart, and he led an exemplary life, a purposeful life. And all of us who are parents would be well advised to look at his life as a role model for our children.
Those who knew Wortham best called upon those listening to do something to carry on Wortham's legacy.
It's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry. And it's okay to grieve. But let's not be angry. No. Because angry saps your energy, and we have much to do.
Officer Wortham was buried at Lincoln Cemetery, and on this Memorial Day, he'll be among those fallen soldiers honored for their service at the cemetery. There were so many beautiful things said about him today, Linda and Ravi, impossible to include in this report, but the overall message was to not let his legacy die with him, to carry on his work to keep our streets safe.
He's a special man, wasn't he?
Indeed.
All right, Leah, thank you so much.
Tears and tributes today for a fallen Chicago police officer. Thomas Wortham was shot and killed during a robbery attempt last week. And today, hundreds honored his life, his dedication to country and community.
Other than my father, I don't know if God ever created a better man.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kathy Brock.
And I'm Ravi Bajwal. Alan Krzyzewski has tonight off. Officer Wortham was a 3-year veteran of the Chicago Police Force, and he had recently returned from a second tour of duty in Iraq. ABC 7's Leah Hope has more now on today's final farewell.
Hundreds of officers filed into Trinity United Church of Christ this morning, a farewell to a fallen officer.
If you want to see success, you need not look any further than the man Tom was. If God needed another soldier, another warrior in heaven, then he got more than that. He got Thomas Wortham IV.
Officer Tom Wortham IV served 3 years on the Chicago Police Force. He also did 2 tours of duty in Iraq with the Wisconsin National Guard. But today, speakers honored Wortham for all of his service during his 30 years of life.
Smart, focused, friendly, helpful, loving, and brave. As the old folks would say, he came from good stock. He was the exemplification of what a young black man should be.
Wortham was killed after a thwarted attempted armed robbery in front of Wortham's parents' home in the Chatham neighborhood, the same neighborhood where Wortham had been working to restore peace when he was killed.
He was working to improve his community, not just as a soldier, not just as a police officer, but as a resident, to protecting his neighborhood for the children of Chatham.
Wortham's family urged those in attendance to continue Wortham's work.
I'm glad we had him when we did. I hope God has him now. And I just hope that all of you don't just leave here and forget, but that the same pain that we have now can propel us.
It's okay to be sad. Mm-hmm. It's okay to cry. And it's okay to grieve. But let's not be angry. No. Because angry saps your energy. And we have much to do.
Officer Wortham hoped to move closer to his parents, get married, and have kids. His dreams for himself will not be fulfilled, but his dreams for the Chatham community now lay with the living. In Chicago, Leah Hope, ABC 7 News.
Good afternoon. Today we gather to offer a final goodbye to a son and a brother, a soldier and a police officer, a friend and a patriot. Today we gather to remember Thomas Wortham IV, a young man who dedicated himself in service to others and whose life was cut tragically short. To Tom's family and friends, in particular his mom and dad, Carolyn and Thomas, his sister Sandra, and the rest of the family, we share in your grief today. There are no words that I can say, no comfort that I can give that will assuage the pain of your loss. If there is solace to be found, it is in the knowledge that Tom lived his life with honor, courage, and commitment, and that in his time here with us, a time far too brief, he made a deep and lasting impression on all of those who he came into contact with. Thomas Wortham IV, star number 6181, was an excellent police officer, an accomplished soldier, and a leader of men. He was, in a simple word, a warrior. On more than one occasion, Thomas Wortham took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the values that we hold so dear. That is exactly what Tom was doing when he was taken from us. Confronted with evil, he did not back down. He fought. He fought to protect himself, his family, and the community that he loved. With police officers and soldiers, death often comes quickly, without time for the goodbyes or the farewells. It often comes not in the comforts of one home, or in one's bed, but on the battlefield or on the street. This is the reality that soldiers and police officers face on a daily basis. This was the reality that Thomas Wortham confronted when he was murdered by cowards who had nothing to offer society. But Thomas Wortham, he had so much to give and so much to contribute. All those who knew Tom recognized in him a potential for greatness. 7th District Officer Kevin Spicek, who went through the academy with Tom, described him simply as a natural leader. I, fortunately, had the privilege of seeing Tom only 2 weeks ago in front of the tree known as the Chicago tree, while we were in Washington, D.C. for the police memorial. He spent the week there, honoring our fallen officers, rooming with Andy Turner, and spending time with Tom Vargas, Tom's wife Maggie, and their family. As both Wortham and Vargas were walking up the stairs to the Capitol, Tom stopped to pose for a picture at Vargas's request. Tom Vargas noted that in the hundreds of pictures that he took, Tom Wortham stood as the model of a police officer and as a veteran. Tall, shoulders back, and always professional. For this picture, Vargas just laughed and said, "Dude, breathe." And that made Tom chuckle, and Vargas got the relaxed pose that he was hoping for. Commander Calloway stood alongside Tom at the ceremony. He looked over during the service and noticed that Tom was crying. Tears for his friend Alex Valadez. The next day, Tom took off for New York City to participate in their law enforcement run. Tom updated the commander on his run via text message, as always starting every message with, "Sir." These are the little things in life that we seldom think about until we have to. And of course, how quickly things can change. This is the nature of police work. Every day, the men and women of the Chicago Police Department confront this reality, as do their families. Tom's father, Thomas Wortham III, he knows about this service and about this sacrifice. He knows about the dangers of being a police officer. He saw them every day for 33 years. And he did so again on that terrible night, fighting to protect his son. Thomas did not stand alone that night. Sergeant Wortham, you were there for your son his entire life, and you were there defending him and fighting bravely for him to the last. You were outnumbered and outgunned and facing men who have no regard for human life or that which is decent. Yet you fought them. You risked your life for your son, and he knew you were by his side at the end, just as you were with him from the beginning. And to Mrs. Wortham, you raised your son to be brave, courteous, and a caring man of great character. His dedication to his country, his community, and family are a testament to you. Thank you. And now we must honor Tom's memory through carrying on in the lessons that you instilled in him. At the same time, however, we must confront the sad reality of the world around us. As a society, we must say, enough is enough. Yes, sir. And we must work together, the police and the community, to stand up and confront evil where it exists. Thomas did. He stood up. He was working to improve his community, not just as a soldier, not just as a police officer, but as a resident, to protecting his neighborhood for the children of Chatham. When a police officer is killed, a piece of all of us dies with them. We have stood in too many churches, listening to too many eulogies for too many good men and women who were willing to serve and who were taken from us. We owe them a debt of gratitude that can never truly be repaid. To the residents of this city of Chicago, I ask you to look carefully at these men and women in uniform, these guardians of freedom, protectors of society. It is these men and women who keep our country safe. It is often too easy to take them for granted. But imagine, if you will, if they were not here. Imagine, if you will, a world without the Thomas Worthams. Men and women who are fighting evil where they find it and defending freedom wherever they stand. To each of you, thank you for your service, your dedication, and your devotion. Officer Thomas Wortham's calling in life was to serve, and serve he did, with honor, courage, and respect. As thousands gather to mourn his passing, we share in the grief of those closest to him. To the men and women of the 7th District, we are here for you once again as we mourn the loss of another proud Englewood Ranger. And to his family and friends, I am wrapping up, We share in your pain as we remember his life. We are here for you, and we always will be. We will never forget, and that's a promise that I make to you. To all of those who have come to honor Officer Wortham's memory, I offer the respect of a grateful city and a proud police department. Thomas, we pray that you have found comfort in God's care. May you go in peace, and may God embrace your soul. May God bless you, your family, and may God bless the Chicago Police Department. Thank you.
I know I speak for the people of the city of Chicago today in the mourning the loss, but also celebrating the life of Officer Thomas Wortham IV. Star number 6181. He's an exemplary police officer devoted to making our entire city safe. He was a courageous member of the Wisconsin National Guard, placing himself in danger of the service of every American and the values that our country represents. He was the type of son that every parent hopes for. Of course, service in the Chicago Police Department was in his blood. It takes an exceptional person to give it himself so fully in so many ways to making the world a better place. But this is the type of person he was. Today, our condolences go to his mother and father, Thomas and Carolyn, to his sister, Sandra, his friend, Caitlin, and the entire family. All of us share the loss. The people of Chicago have lost a compassionate man, a community leader who touched many lives, worked tirelessly to make his neighborhood and his beat a better place to live. When we come to service such as this one, we are always compelled for a moment to think about how much any of us helps change things in a way that will be remembered, in a way that helps people. In Officer Wortham's case, the answer is very simple. He did it in a very big way. Something he said in the newspaper a couple weeks ago should really resonate with us today. Talking about violence in Chicago, and he said, I quote, "We're going to fix it so it doesn't happen again," end of quote. Let us make that the legacy of Thomas Wortham. Let us draw on his strength, his sense of commitment, his love as a neighborhood, his hometown to defeat those who spread violence on a daily basis and pain across families all across our city and our nation. Let the way he went about his life and his work serve as an inspiration to all of us, especially the courageous members of the Chicago Police Department who place themselves in danger every day so that the rest of us can go about our lives in peace. Every Chicagoan owes Thomas an enormous debt of gratitude. And today, every Chicagoan shares the grief of his family, adds to the prayers to the ones we are already saying today. I will pray for you, Thomas. I will pray for your family. Exceptional son. To me, I extend my condolences, and I'm very sorry.
On this profoundly sad day, in this holy place, in the presence of brave men and women who keep the peace, who defend our democracy, in the land of Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, who believed in government of the people and by the people, for the people, he said, "It shall not perish from this earth." There are no words in the English language or any language to relieve the pain of losing an all-American hero like Thomas Wortham IV. It is a very sad day for everyone in our state, indeed our country, our whole world, to lose such a special person. God did not give Tom a long chronological life. His 3 decades on this earth, he had a servant's heart, and he led an exemplary life, a purposeful life. And all of us who are parents would be well advised to look at his life as a role model for our children. The word hero, it's The word hero is bandied about in our society today rather carelessly. Someone who hits a home run in the bottom of the ninth is called the next day's hero, or some rock star or outrageous celebrity is called a role model. Those are really false heroes and definitely not role models. Tommy Wortham, soldier, police officer, citizen, he's our hero and always will be. When I was growing up, Jacqueline Kennedy, the widow of the late president, once said, "If you bungle raising your children, nothing else in life matters." Well, I'm here today on behalf of all the people of Illinois to say to Tom's mom and dad and family, you did not bungle raising your child, your son. You did the hardest thing in life, and you did it very, very well. An example to all of us. In the Bible, in the New Testament, it says, love is patient, love is kind, love never fails. And I think in this house of love, this house of faith, that we need to embrace each other and embrace the life that Tom led. He loved children, whether it be in Iraq, on the streets of Iraq, near the gates of hell, or here on the streets of Chicago, oftentimes filled with violence. Tom stood against that, against the culture of violence. He believed in the Bible. He believed in Isaiah, the Old Testament prophet. He was a righteous oak. That's what Isaiah talked about, a righteous oak. That's what Tom Wortham was, always in his life. And as Alderman Lyle said, he was a volunteer. He believed in volunteerism. That's the heart of America, the heart of Illinois, the heart of everyone who wants to make a difference. We have to go forward and volunteer. And we say, here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I heard you calling in the night. I will go if you lead me and hold your people in my arms. That's what Tom did. He held us in his arms. And we're always and always will be eternally grateful to his life, his devoted life of service. He believed in service to others. That's the rent we pay for our place on God's earth. And I know everyone here and everyone in Illinois and everyone on this planet, and we heard all of those who testified before me, this was a man who more than paid his rent in service. Every day on this earth he had a servant's heart. And as we bring him to his final rest today, I think it is important to remind ourselves that our faith teaches us that we will see Tom again. And thank him for his service. Earlier today, I was at a grammar school commemorating Memorial Day on Monday. These little boys and girls, some of them in first grade, singing our Star Spangled Banner and God Bless America. Now, the third verse of God Bless America, we seldom hear, but it sums up the life of Thomas Wortham IV. It says, "O beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life." Tom Wortham, he is our hero, proven in liberating strife. He loved his country more than self, and mercy more than life. So on this sad day, where we bring him to his final rest, we ask God to bless his immortal soul. We love you, Tom, and we always will.
I hope that you will accommodate us, as Tommy would say, Mom, we've got to make a little adjustment here. Sandra is coming up to say something, but she wasn't sure she could do it. But this is the love of his life, Miss Caitlin Waldhart, and she would like to say a few words to you.
Tom
Tommy was the most amazing man that I ever had the privilege and honor of knowing, let alone capturing his heart. I loved him more than words could express, and I wanted to marry him and give him that litter of kids. The first time I met Tommy officially, he asked me to dance. And for the next 6 years, we continued to dance through our relationship. Regardless of if it was in a store, on the street, with music, no music, he always asked me to dance. He always kept me smiling, laughing. He loved surprising me, and I was either too gullible and didn't ever pick up on it, or he was just really good at it, one or the other. Sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't, but they always made me smile. Another thing that made me love Tommy even more was not only the big achievements that he's accomplished by being a Chicago police officer, a soldier, a great community member, but just the little day-to-day things that he did, whether it was holding the door open for someone, helping a mother carry her children up and down a flight of stairs with their stroller, or just wishing people a good day on the street. Dating Tommy has made me a better person, and I will always hold him in my heart. I will love you forever, Tommy. Thank you.
And we now continue our homegoing worship service with tributes, beginning first with a very special tribute, the mother, the mom of Thomas E. Wortham, Carolyn Wortham.
Give me a minute. Many of you have asked me what you could do to help us to get through this very, very difficult situation. And before I answer that question, I would like to say that we are just absolutely overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and support that we have received from you here at Trinity today and people all around the world. And we want you to know how very much we appreciate your expressions of sympathy and your support for us during this very difficult time. Now, getting back to Tommy, because this is his day. To answer the question of how can you help, first we would like for you to continue to pray for us and to pray for Tommy's soul and to pray for our community. We need to look at what Tommy was doing in the recent past. And many of you who did not know him personally may not know some of the things that he was doing. So I just want to relate a few of those things to you, and I will keep my eye on the clock. I'm not a public speaker, so please bear with me. Most of the audiences to whom I have ever spoken were between 5 and 6 years old. But we want this to be a celebration of Tommy's life. And if you knew him, you knew his life was all about backing up his words with his actions. Please do what I believe that Tommy did. I want each person who's listening to this to please search their soul and ask God for the grace, the strength, and the direction to change something, to help somebody, and to be a little better today than you were yesterday. Tommy looked at education and said, what can I do? He had just joined a young men's mentoring group. Actually, it's the same mentoring group where my husband volunteers. He looked at our community and he said, what can I do? He joined the local community organization. He joined the advisory council of our local park in an effort to bring more resources to our community. He eventually became the president of the advisory council of that park. He looked at our city, and what did he do? He supported our alderman in her efforts to improve our neighborhood, because we can do that, but it has to be done house by house, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, community by community. He looked at families, including ours, and what did he do? He reached out to any kid who would listen to him. And he explained and shared about mistakes that he had made as a child and how they could avoid being repeated. He looked at the city, and what did he do? He tried to do his job fairly, and he respected every person with whom he came in contact and gave them the dignity that they deserved. He looked at children globally, and most of you probably don't know this. What did he do? He wrote me from Iraq, and he expressed how hurt he was that children on that side of the planet were so in need. And because I am a retired educator, well, I wasn't retired then, but I'm retired now. He asked me what I thought we could do, and we talked about it. We talked about it back and forth in emails. We talked about it back and forth in letters. And with the assistance of my sorority, we started a school supply drive. And those were eventually shipped to the base and distributed to the children in the town. And that's just that he knew that he could not save the entire country. He couldn't save every child, but he could do what he was able to do. And that's what each one of us need to do also. What else do I want to say? Oh, I know what I want to say. Remember, it's okay to be sad. Mm-hmm. It's okay to cry. And it's okay to grieve. But let's not be angry. No. Because angry saps your energy. and we have much to do. So I won't take up too much more of your time, but I want you to remember the words that were written above Tommy that say, "May the work I've done speak for me." He wouldn't say these things. He wouldn't tell you what he had done. He just did it. And I think that he will like his legacy to be that everyone who cared about him, in whatever way they cared about him, do what they can do just to continue the things that he was doing. A wise man once said, "Be the change that you want to see." So let's try and do that. And it's okay if we cry. It's okay if we're sad. But Tommy would want us to continue doing what he was doing. And I want to thank you for your time, and thank you for all of your outstanding support.
Officer Thomas Wortham served his country, his city, his community. And today, at his funeral, a call to action by his family to carry on the work that he started. Wortham was murdered outside of his parents' home last week.
He was the victim of an attempted robbery, but today was all about how he lived. And ABC 7's Stacey Baca here now with a tribute to the fallen officer. Stacey?
Well, so true, Rebby and Kathleen. Officer Wortham lived a life of service, and that was reflected in a message that his parents placed in his casket today. The words read, "May the work I've done speak for me." Wortham certainly worked as an officer, a soldier, a community leader. Today, Wortham's family wants his life work to inspire the rest of us. Officer Wortham's life ended, but work to end violence in his memory now begins.
It's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry. And it's okay to grieve. But let's not be angry. No. Because angry saps your energy, and we have much to do.
We can't say it's too hard. Pack up the house. You know, like if we all pack up, then what? You know, Tommy never ran from a challenge, and so I don't think we should.
Officer Wortham was shot last week when 4 men tried to steal his motorcycle in front of his parents' Chatham home. Wortham's father, who's a retired police sergeant, witnessed the violence and fired back, killing one suspect.
Thomas did not stand alone that night. Sergeant Wortham, you were there for your son his entire life, and you were there defending him and fighting bravely for him to the last.
Wortham died in Chicago. He had survived 2 tours of duty in Iraq, leading soldiers in the Wisconsin National Guard.
You showed no fear. Your men admired you. They would follow you anywhere.
In Chicago, it was his dedication to District 7 and his fellow officers on the 3rd Watch.
Tom possessed the qualities that you can only get from having loving parents: a strong work ethic, courage, selflessness, responsibility, and most of all, integrity. I can honestly say that Mr. and Mrs. Wortham did a fine job.
So now the Worthams want others to feel inspired and continue the work their son was doing. The governor and mayor also recognized Wortham's work. Now, along with his work, Wortham also had love in his life. His girlfriend of 6 years remembered him for everyday tasks. We're talking about opening doors for others, helping people across the street, or even greeting someone with a smile. And certainly, Ravi and Kathy, that says a lot about a person as well. So along with his girlfriend, he's survived by his sister and his parents.
So many things, big and small.
Absolutely.
Stacey, thanks.
Okay. You ready? Beatrice Quayle, assistant. Okay. Beatrice Quayle.
Yeah.
Okay. Ready? Beatrice Quayle, Assistant Superintendent, Administration. It is with profound sadness that I announce the senseless murder of a Chicago police officer. We are not announcing the name at this time due to pending notification to next of kin. I can say that he was a decorated 20-year officer and was most recently assigned to the 1st District. He was returning home after a tour of duty when he was shot in the 7400 block of South Evans. The officer was transported to Northwestern Hospital, where he was pronounced at 6:40 a.m. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family at this terrible time, as well as with the men and women of the police department. The investigation into his murder is ongoing. There is no one in custody at this time. Area 2 detectives are canvassing the area and following up on all leads. If anyone has information, please call Area 2 detectives at 312-747-8272 or call 911. Words cannot express the shock, sorrow, and outrage we feel at the loss of a Chicago police officer. This is the 3rd brave officer killed since May. The job of being a police officer is incredibly rewarding. Each day we have the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of others. At the same time, being a Chicago police officer is incredibly dangerous, but it is the risk we accept without hesitation because of the overwhelming commitment to public service. The officer and those we lost recently embody that commitment to public service and the willingness to sacrifice their lives protecting all of us. Thank you. There will be no questions at this time. We will release the name and photo after the next of kin are notified.
Thanks. Can you spell your last name?
Cuello.
Thank you.
I have a question. Do you mind to give me a soundbite in Spanish?
Chicago's police superintendent says it is time to stop trying to place blame for a crash that killed a sergeant earlier this week. There were accusations that city budget woes may have led to a slick pavement on Lakeshore Drive Monday. Others are questioning whether an old squad car may have played a role.
ABC 7's Ben Bradley is here with more. Ben?
Ron, Cheryl, at its heart, these are questions about whether anyone other than Mother Nature should shoulder the blame for a police sergeant's death. Chicago's police superintendent says the burglars who stole a few cell phones, triggering the policeman's response, are to blame and perhaps should be charged with murder. Some snowplow drivers tell us their boss is to blame because he told them to stop salting Lakeshore Drive to save money.
Just before 1 o'clock Monday morning on Inner Lakeshore Drive, these images capture a snowplow clearing the road, spreading salt in its wake. 3 miles north and 4 hours later, Sergeant Alan Haymaker's squad car crashes as the veteran cop tries to exit Lakeshore Drive.
It appears everything we're looking at, it's an accident. And sometimes accidents happen. There's no one to blame. There's no one to point a finger at.
Eyewitnesses told police it appeared icy roads were a factor. The question now being asked on a popular police blog, did city penny pinching lead to the slick conditions? A streets and sanitation spokesperson says snow plowing and salting began Sunday night at 7 p.m. At 10:50 p.m., plow operators on Lakeshore Drive were instructed to only salt as needed because conditions had improved. A source, though, tells ABC 7 plow drivers were ordered by their boss to stop salting Lakeshore Drive just before midnight. The crash happened just after 5 a.m. The Streets and Sand spokesperson says he is not aware of any specific order to stop salting. Operators of Chicago's Snow Command have long trumpeted their ability to track in real time the location of snowplows and whether they're spreading salt. But today, Streets and Sanitation refuse to say whether their high-tech tracking can tell them whether the drive was salted in the hours before Sergeant Haymaker's crash.
No, they saw it to Lakeshore Drive. You should know that.
Sergeant Haymaker was driving a Chevy Impala squad car with 114,000 miles on it. But police brass say it was serviced last month and there were no reported problems. The superintendent says it is the officer's family that should remain the focal point.
Those are the people that we need to keep conscious of and not trying to affix blame and make outrageous claims about who's to blame or what type of equipment we had in the vehicles. That's just fundamentally wrong.
Late today, at our request, Chicago's Office of Emergency Management and Communication reviewed records. They tell us there were no reports of accidents on the north end of Lakeshore Drive in the hours leading up to Sergeant Haymaker's crash. So Ron and Cheryl, that would seem to indicate that the road was at least in fairly drivable shape.
All right. Thanks, Ben. A suspect has been arrested in the burglary that's linked to the crash that killed Chicago Police Sergeant Alan Haymaker. And tonight his family and friends and fellow officers are attending the visitation for the sergeant. ABC 7's Sarah Schulte now joining us live on the Northwest Side. Sarah?
Well, Alan, the man charged in that burglary is 28-year-old Larry Brown. Bond was denied for him today because he was already on probation when he allegedly committed the crime. Meantime, here on the Northwest Side, Sergeant Alan Haymaker is being remembered as someone who loved his family, friends, and his faith. With a flag of mourning flying above, Sergeant Alan Haymaker's family enters the church many say was Haymaker's second home. Before joining the Chicago Police Department 21 years ago, Haymaker was an associate pastor. Haymaker's colleagues at the 23rd District say the 56-year-old's strong faith made him a better police officer.
That experience with him being a pastor, he was able to relate to a lot of other situations, that maybe people who don't have some type of religious experience. It was just a little bit easier for him to relate to it.
Haymaker was killed in a one-car accident on Lakeshore Drive early Monday morning. He was responding to a burglary call in the Lakeview neighborhood. Today, 28-year-old Larry Brown was charged in that burglary. Earlier this week, Superintendent Jody Weiss indicated that he was looking into possible murder charges against the burglar because Haymaker died on the way to a crime scene. But today, the Cook County State's attorney said there is not enough evidence to meet the burden of proof for murder. It's a decision that does not surprise legal experts.
When it's ahead of time, there's a foreseeability factor. The burglar is not foreseeing that some police officer is going to get into a squad car, race to the scene, and in the course of it end up being dead. And so the state, I don't think, would have been able to sustain their burden. If they're not able to sustain their burden, there's no point in charging.
Kent School of Law professor Richard Kling says murder charges would be easier if Haymaker was killed during the crime or while he was chasing the suspect afterwards. Haymaker's wake was attended by members of law enforcement from all over the county, including Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart.
For somebody like this who has done so much for all of us in this city and in this county, it's a horrible loss, and my heart just goes out to the family.
Haymaker is survived by his wife and 3 daughters. The wake tonight will last until 9 o'clock. At 7 o'clock tonight will be the traditional St. Jude Memorial. Tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. will be Sergeant Haymaker's funeral. In the meantime, police continue to look for more suspects in that burglary. Live on the Northwest Side, Sarah Schulte, ABC 7 News. Alan, Kathy, back to you.
Okay, Sarah, thank you.